Coruscant was already drowning in fear when Chancellor Palpatine made his final move. The war had exhausted the Senate. The Jedi were isolated, and Anakin Skywalker stood exactly where Darth Sidious wanted him, torn between duty, anger, and love. One more push, one more secret, one more wound, and the chosen hero of the Republic would become the blade that destroyed it. But that moment never came. After learning the truth about Palpatine, Anakin did not race straight back to the Chancellor's office. He left the temple in a storm of doubt. Desperate for air, desperate for distance, desperate to silence the voices pulling him apart. He sped through the lower levels of Coruscant without direction until a sudden reactor blast ripped through a crowded transit bridge ahead of him. Metal screamed. Speeders crashed. Civilians fell into smoke and fire. Anakin reacted on instinct. He leapt into the chaos, using the Force to hold collapsing steel in place while dragging families from burning wreckage. For nearly an hour, the hero of the Clone Wars vanished into disaster relief, unseen by the Jedi Council, unseen by Palpatine, and cut off from every call that might have pulled him back into destiny. By the time he reached a secure channel again, Mace Windu had already gone to confront the Chancellor. Inside Palpatine's office, the future split apart. The Sith Lord expected Anakin to burst through the doors at the perfect instant, horrified by Jedi aggression and ready to defend him. Instead, only Mace and the other Masters came. No conflicted knight. No fearful apprentice. No emotional weapon to turn the tide. Sidious felt the absence immediately, and for the first time in years, the dark side did not flow according to his design. Across the city, Anakin sensed something terrible. A cold shock tore through the Force. Windu had moved. Palpatine had been cornered. And without realizing it, Anakin Skywalker had just stepped out of the role the Sith had written for him. By the time he turned back toward the Senate district, Coruscant was already changing in ways nobody yet understood. Mace Windu came for the Chancellor with 3 Jedi Masters at his side, expecting danger but not the full truth of it. The office doors sealed behind them. Palpatine rose slowly from his chair, dropped the mask of concern, and let Darth Sidious speak. The room turned deadly in an instant. His blade flashed. Agen Kolar fell. Saesee Tiin fell. Kit Fisto lasted only seconds longer. Yet the victory Sidious expected still did not come, because one piece was missing from the board. There was no Anakin Skywalker to break the stalemate, no desperate plea, no severed hand, no moment of moral collapse to poison the Jedi Order from within. Windu drove him back with pure, controlled fury. The duel was faster and harsher than Sidious had foreseen. Every second stretched his risk. If he killed Windu too quickly, he exposed himself fully. If he stalled too long, Temple security might learn the truth before he was ready. Worse still, he could feel Anakin somewhere in the city, alive, unsettled, but not yet his. The future was no longer narrowing, it was opening. Sidious changed tactics. He unleashed force lightning in violent waves, shattering statues and scorching the Chancellor's chamber. Windu absorbed it and turned it back. The dark power ripped across Sidious's face and hands, twisting his features into the monster hidden beneath the public mask. For years, he had planned to reveal that image as proof of a Jedi assassination attempt. Now it happened too soon, messy and uncontrolled. Palpatine screamed for help across hidden channels. Red Guard units moved. Clone command officers received coded alerts. Emergency propaganda teams were activated before the script was ready. It was no longer a perfect trap. It was damage control. Then, Anakin finally arrived outside the office doors and heard not a plea for mercy, but Sidious raging like a cornered beast. For one frozen second, he understood everything. The Chancellor had never been a victim. He had always been the shadow behind the war. And inside that ruined office, Mace Windu raised his saber for the ending Palpatine feared most. Mace Windu did not hesitate. Seeing Anakin at the doorway but no longer under Sidious's spell, He pressed the attack with absolute certainty. Palpatine threw lightning again, but the effort was wild, desperate, and uneven. Windu cut through the blast, disarmed the Sith Lord, and drove him to the edge of the shattered window. This time, there was no pleading young knight to intervene. There was only silence, broken by Sidious's own fury. Then the hidden command went out. Execute Order 66. Across the galaxy, clone troopers turned on their generals. Blasters fired in jungles, on starships, in deserts, and over ruined battlefields. But something crucial had changed. The command came with no Darth Vader ready to march on the Jedi Temple, no chosen enforcer to cut off the Order's head in one stroke. Palpatine had launched the purge while still trapped inside his office, half-burned and fighting for survival. That delay saved lives. On Kashyyyk, Yoda sensed the wave of death before the clones opened fire. He moved first and escaped. On Utapau, Obi-Wan survived the betrayal and disappeared into the Sinkhole City before clone forces could confirm the kill. On Saleucami, Megiddo, and Cato Neimoidia, several Jedi fell as they had in the original fate of the galaxy, but others did not. Confusion spread through the clone ranks as emergency orders overlapped with reports that the Chancellor himself was under arrest. Inside the temple, Master Shakti received a fragmented warning from Coruscant. She locked down the archives, rallied every available knight, and prepared the younglings for evacuation. When shock troops arrived, they met organized resistance instead of helpless surprise. The halls of the temple became a battlefield of blue and green light, clone discipline against Jedi, speed, training, and desperation. And at the center of it all stood Anakin Skywalker, staring at the man he had once trusted. The Republic was collapsing in real time. The war had not ended. It had changed shape. If Anakin chose the Jedi now, the purge could still be broken in time somehow. If he hesitated, the galaxy would burn anyway. Yoda reached Coruscant in secret, while the city drowned in panic. Official broadcasts called the Jedi traitors. Military channels repeated emergency orders. Yet none of it felt complete. The message was rushed, uneven, and full of contradictions. Even before he met Obi-Wan in the hidden Senate safe house, Yoda knew the truth. Sidious had struck before every piece was in place. Obi-Wan arrived wounded, wet from sewer runoff, and carrying the hard proof the Jedi needed. Temple survivors had transmitted battle footage before communications collapsed. Clone shock troops had attacked first. Jedi defenders had shielded younglings and civilians. Most important of all, Anakin had not led the assault. Darth Vader did not exist. The dark shadow Obi-Wan feared had not been born. In the original design of Sidious's victory, Anakin was meant to become terror made flesh. He would destroy the temple, hunt survivors, and embody the lie that the Jedi had fallen to violence. Without him, Palpatine had only fear and raw military force. That was enough to kill, but not enough to control the entire narrative. Yoda and Obi-Wan moved quickly. Bail Organa secured surviving senators. Temple beacons were altered to warn Jedi away from obvious traps. Trusted cells on Chandrila, Alderaan, and Corellia were told the same message. The Chancellor was the Sith Lord. Spread it before the clone blockade tightened. Then came the most dangerous question of all. What about Anakin? Instead, he found a man shattered by what he had almost become. Anakin confessed everything. Palpatine's promise, the tale of Darth Plagueis, the fear for Padme, the years of manipulation. He had stood one step from darkness, and only accident, chaos, and a delayed choice had saved him. Yoda listened in silence. The future still trembled around Skywalker. He was not redeemed by comfort. He was dangerous precisely because he now saw how close he had come. And as Coruscant sealed its skies and clone fleets shifted over the capital, the Jedi understood the terrible truth. To save the Republic, they would need Anakin Skywalker alive, free, and fighting against the Master who nearly claimed him. Padme Amidala had watched the Republic decay one vote at a time. She had seen emergency powers become habit, fear become policy, and applause replace conscience in the Senate chamber. But when Anakin came to her after the duel in the Chancellor's office, she saw something even worse. She saw the wreckage Palpatine had almost made of his soul. He expected judgment. He expected horror. Instead, Padme demanded the truth. Anakin told her everything. He spoke of the nightmares that haunted him, the promise Sidious had used against him, and the terrible bargain that had almost pulled him into darkness. He admitted that he had hidden too much for too long. He had tried to carry fear alone, and that secrecy had made him weak. Padme listened through the pain and the shock. Then she made the decision that changed the war. They would stop hiding. With Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, Padme built a political strike. Temple survivors smuggled out recordings from the Chancellor's office. Senate aides leaked timestamps, security movements, and emergency clone orders that proved Palpatine had prepared the purge before any public accusation against the Jedi. The story was no longer rumor. It became evidence. Then Padme walked into the Senate. The chamber was packed with loyalists, frightened moderates, observers, and systems leaning toward dictatorship. Palpatine was absent, sealed inside a military medical wing while Masa Meta handled the session. That helped her. For once, the voice commanding the room was not his. Padme spoke without fear. She named the Chancellor as Darth Sidious. She named the war as engineered slaughter. She named the Jedi Purge as treason against the Republic itself. Then she did what no one expected. She called Anakin Skywalker forward. The hero with no fear stood before the Senate and confessed that Palpatine had tried to turn him into the instrument of a dictatorship. Gasps spread through the chamber. Loyalist worlds wavered. Military certainty cracked. And within the Senate district, Palpatine heard the report and understood that Padme Amidala had become something he never planned for. A witness the galaxy would believe. Palpatine had always depended on speed, renamed the Republic before anyone could think clearly. But now the sequence had failed. His enemies were alive, his apprentice was gone, and the story meant to justify his new empire was collapsing faster than his officers could contain it. On many fronts, Order 66 still held. Inhibitor chips forced obedience, and countless troopers continued hunting Jedi with cold precision. But the command structure around them was no longer stable. Some commanders received revised orders naming certain senators as traitors. Others were told the Chancellor was under attack by rogue security forces. Naval groups above key worlds intercepted conflicting authorizations from Coruscant and local sector governments. On Alderaan, Bail Organa convinced senior officers to delay enforcement until direct proof arrived from the capital. On Chandrila, regional defense fleets refused to surrender civilian communications to clone control. On Corellia, dock workers and militia cells sabotaged troop transfers the moment Padme's speech spread through the HoloNet. Worlds that had feared speaking now saw a chance to resist before the new regime could lock its grip. Even inside the Grand Army, doubt began to surface in dangerous ways. Some clones noticed that Jedi they had served beside for years were protecting civilians instead of attacking them. Others witnessed fellow troopers execute prisoners and began to question what the Republic had become. A few commanders, especially those far from Coruscant, chose procedure over blind aggression and waited. That hesitation saved entire groups of survivors. Anakin understood what this meant better than anyone. The war was no longer Jedi against clones. It was truth against programming, loyalty against control, Republic against Empire before the Empire even had a throne. So he made the hardest choice left to him. Anakin went public again. He sent a direct appeal to clone units across the Mid-Rim, telling them the Chancellor had betrayed the Republic and used them as weapons against their own generals. It was a reckless move. It was also the one act only he could attempt. And somewhere, in barracks and bridge towers across the galaxy, clones began to listen. The surviving Jedi knew time was now their greatest enemy. Every hour Palpatine remained alive inside the capital, He rebuilt control. More fleets declared for him. More clone units tightened their obedience. More frightened senators chose safety over truth. If the Jedi wanted to stop the Empire before it hardened, they had to hit Coruscant immediately. For the first time since the war began, they gathered not as scattered fugitives, but as a fighting remnant. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Shakti, and a handful of surviving knights met aboard a hidden frigate in the shadow of the moon. The plan was simple, only an outline. Bail Organa's allies would trigger unrest inside the Senate district. Loyal defense crews would jam military channels. Jedi strike teams would penetrate the lower access lanes beneath the executive sector. At the center of it all, Yoda and Anakin would confront Sidious together. No one pretended it was safe. Everyone there knew some would never come back from Coruscant alive. Obi-Wan understood the danger most clearly. Without Darth Vader, Palpatine lacked a hunter strong enough to crush scattered survivors one by one. That was why this attack was possible. But it also meant Sidious would throw everything else into the defense of his throne. Red Guards, clone commandos, gunships, hidden assassins, and every reserve unit still loyal to fear. Before departure, Obi-Wan and Anakin shared a silence heavier than any argument. Teacher and student stood on the edge of a history neither had expected. Obi-Wan still felt the wound of secrets kept. Anakin still carried shame for how close he had come to betrayal. Yet there was no time left to heal first and fight later. The assault began at dusk. Explosions rolled across undercity transport shafts as resistance cells struck power relays. Gunships lifted over the skylanes. Senate alarms wailed. Temple survivors emerged from hidden routes to carve open a path through clone barricades. Coruscant, the jewel of the Republic, became a war zone beneath its own towers. And in the burning reflection of those towers, Anakin felt Palpatine waiting. Not afraid, not beaten, ready. Coruscant burned from the inside out as the last battle of the Republic reached the executive sector. Clone lines collapsed and reformed across the plazas. Senate Guard units switched sides mid-fight. Civilian broadcasts cut through official jamming and showed the Capitol in chaos, not under Jedi attack, but under open civil war caused by one man's hunger for absolute rule. For years, Palpatine had prepared to rise as the savior of order. Now the galaxy watched him cling to power through fire, secrecy, and murder. Yoda and Anakin broke into the upper chamber together. Sidious stood before the broken panoramic window, cloak torn, face scarred, eyes blazing with the hatred of a plan ruined at the final second. He looked from the Grand Master to the Chosen One and understood the shape of his defeat. If Anakin had come to him 1 hour earlier, the Jedi would have died, the Temple would have fallen, and fear would have crowned an empire. Instead, one missing moment had undone decades. Yoda met Sidious in a storm of Force power that cracked pillars and hurled Senate pods from their mounts. Anakin drove in from the flank, faster, harsher, carrying not the rage of a Sith apprentice, but the desperate will of a man fighting the future he almost chose. Sidious answered with everything lightning, speed, deception, and promises spat like poison. He told Anakin Padme would still die. He told him the Jedi would never trust him. He told him power was the only way to keep what he loved. This time, Anakin did not listen. He saw Padme's courage, Obi-Wan's faith, the younglings in the temple, the clones trapped inside commands they never chose. He saw the Republic bleeding and understood that saving it meant letting go of the fear that had made him vulnerable from the start. So when Yoda broke Sidious's guard, Anakin struck. The Sith Lord finally fell, and as dawn spread over Coruscant, the Empire died unborn, leaving the galaxy to face a harder question. What could the Republic become now that it had survived its own darkness?